Unmasking the avoidance real feelings in mutual silence. It starts with silence, that heavy, echoing kind that fills the space between two people who once couldn't stop talking. At first, you think it's just a pause, a break, a moment to breathe. But then days pass and no one reaches out. You don't text, they don't call, and suddenly the quiet becomes its own language. You start wondering, do they even care? For someone who's ever dealt with a dismissive or fearful avoidant, this silence isn't new. It's familiar. It's their comfort zone, their emotional shield. But here's what's fascinating. That silence you think means they've moved on often hides a storm you can't see. Because for an avoidant, mutual silence isn't peace. It's a battlefield where their deepest fears and suppressed feelings quietly clash. See, avoidants are masters of emotional distance. They crave connection, but fear dependence. They want closeness, but panic when it gets real. So when both of you go silent, they don't immediately think it's over. Instead, they freeze in confusion. Their mind starts juggling two powerful but opposite needs: the longing to feel safe and the terror of losing control. They tell themselves, good, no one's reaching out. I can finally breathe. But then, that same silence starts whispering back, why aren't they reaching out either? That's when the avoidant begins to spiral internally, not with tears or obvious sadness, but with an ache that slowly builds beneath their calm surface. On the outside, they look composed, posting, working, pretending like they're fine. But inside, they're scanning for signs of your absence. They might reread old messages, check if you viewed their story, or even think about you late at night when the distractions fade. The truth is, when mutual silence begins, it triggers something powerful in an avoidant. The part of them that always believed people would eventually leave. But here's the twist. When you don't chase them, it doesn't give them relief forever. At first, yes, they feel control, they feel safe. But after a while, the silence they once used to protect themselves starts to backfire, because it reminds them of something even scarier than closeness: being forgotten. Avoidants live in a strange emotional contradiction. They push people away to feel safe, but the very distance they create becomes their loneliness. So when no one reaches out, they start wondering, was I really that easy to let go? That question haunts them. It's subtle, but it gnaws at their self-image. Because deep down, even avoidants want to be missed. They want to matter. They just don't know how to receive love without feeling suffocated by it. Mutual silence, then, becomes their mirror. It reflects back not your weakness, but their avoidance. Their inability to stay connected when it matters most. You see, most people assume the avoidant doesn't feel, that they're cold, detached, even heartless. But that's not true. Their feelings are there, just buried under layers of fear, shame, and emotional self-protection. When silence stretches long enough, those buried emotions start leaking through the cracks. They remember your laughter, your tone, your presence. They think of things they never said, moments they never appreciated. And even though they may not reach out, those thoughts don't just disappear. They sit with them, quietly, painfully. For an avoidant, silence doesn't erase emotional attachment. It just hides it beneath a thick wall of pride and confusion. What makes this silence even more intense is that both of you are now mirroring each other's energy. You're waiting for them, and they're waiting for you. The difference is, while you might interpret silence as loss, they interpret it as proof that connection is unsafe. And yet, in the quiet, they begin to feel something they rarely allow themselves to: vulnerability. They might try to distract themselves, jump into work, flirt with someone else, or convince themselves that they never needed you. But avoidance isn't the same as indifference. Every distraction is just a temporary escape from the emotional noise that silence brings. Now here's where it gets deeper. Silence for an avoidant is both punishment and protection. It protects them from rejection, but it also punishes them with loneliness. They think keeping distance means control, but in truth, the longer the silence goes on, the more it reveals their powerlessness over real emotions. The human heart doesn't play by avoidant rules. It doesn't care how rationally they try to suppress longing or how stoically they hide behind their independence. So when you both stop talking, the avoidant begins to feel a strange dissonance. They wanted space, but now that they have it, it feels cold and meaningless. At night, that's when the truth sneaks in. When the world gets quiet and the distractions fade, their own thoughts start confronting them. Did I push too far? Why didn't they reach out? Did they finally give up on me? That's the moment they realize something they've avoided their whole life, that love can't survive without vulnerability. But instead of texting you or admitting their feelings, they often double down on their silence. Because reaching out means risking rejection, and rejection is the one wound their ego can't bear. So they stay quiet, even when their heart is screaming. And here's what's truly paradoxical. That silence you're both sitting in might be the closest thing the avoidant has ever come to emotional growth, because it forces them to confront the emptiness behind their defenses. It forces them to realize that emotional safety doesn't come from walls, it comes from trust. You may think they don't care, but often silence is where the avoidant finally begins to understand the cost of their detachment. It's where they start to feel regret, even if they'll never say it out loud. If you've ever gone silent with an avoidant and wondered what's happening inside them, know this: they notice your absence far more than they'll ever admit. They may not chase you, but they think about you. They may not reach out, but they replay the story in their mind, rewriting moments where they could have chosen differently. Silence exposes them, not you. It shows them what connection really meant and how fragile their version of control truly is. The avoidant's real feelings in mutual silence are complicated, a mix of pride, fear, and hidden longing. They tell themselves they're fine, but they keep glancing at their phone. They convince themselves they've moved on, but they still check your social media late at night. They say they prefer space, but their dreams betray them with memories of you. That's the truth behind the mask. They care deeply, but caring terrifies them. They want to be loved, but love feels like danger. So they stay silent, hoping time will numb the ache. But silence doesn't heal them. It just deepens their awareness of what they've lost. And maybe that's where your power lies. Not in chasing, not in breaking the silence, but in holding it. Because when you hold your ground and match their silence, you're not playing a game. You're reflecting their behavior back to them. You're forcing them to sit with what they've created. For the first time, the avoidant has to face the reality that their emotional distance isn't strength, it's fear, and no one can rescue them from it but themselves. In the end, mutual silence isn't about who cares less, it's about who can face themselves in the quiet. The avoidant's real feelings are there, buried beneath pride, fear, and old wounds. But the longer they sit in that silence, the clearer one truth becomes. Emotional avoidance doesn't protect love, it slowly starves it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to break the silence, but to let it reveal everything they're too afraid to say.